Mm.
Got it. Go. All right.
Going live here now, just letting everything catch up, the technology.
Yep.
Sometimes it's instant and sometimes it takes a moment. So welcome.
There we are.
There we go. Got it live streamed. And now if you're catching the replay, take a breath, settle in, maybe grab some water to have with you because this conversation is going to be heavily encoded with a lot of magic. We are calling that in to support people in forging their own path, trusting themselves, and so much more. I can't wait to see where this conversation is going to go and flow. So I'm excited to be here with Tracy Montgomery, who is a friend, a former client, and just a all-around beautiful soul that I've been meaning to connect with because it's been a while since we've had a full conversation, even though we live in the same city. And we couldn't find a time to get together soon enough in person. So I'm like, let's just have a more public conversation and see what arises. So welcome, Tracy. While I'm sharing this out, if people haven't met you before, what should they know about you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. I love doing this kind of stuff. So I'm super happy. It's nice sometimes if you do lots, like just on a total side note for a minute, if you do lots of digital stuff or you're on, you have your own social media, whatever, it's nice to not always be talking to nobody. like not that I'm not talking to nobody, but like versus like checking comments and then responding, like it's really nice to have like two-way dialogue, two-way conversation, two-way energy. It's just really nice to see another face. So total side note, but I just wanted to say that. Yeah, so I live in St. Albert, Alberta. So I'm a YEGer and I have my own studio here called Root to Rise Integrative Healing. And I offer in-person work and I offer virtual work as well. So my clientele spreads far outside of Edmonton as well and into Canada and the United States. But I do in person, I do massage and cupping. I also do some intuitive work and energy healing. So you can come in for an intuitive energy session coupled with massage. And then you can use your benefits, which is also super cool in some ways. And then virtually, I offer past life clearing with the modality of SRT. And I do SIT, which is subconscious imprinting technique. And I do sessions that kind of bring all of my tools and intuitive guidance and smush them all together. And I coach and we do sessions and I just kind of see where it goes. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's never the same, which I don't know if you love that about what you do as well, but I love that. I mean, there might be themes, but no two sessions are ever the same. So it's like that saying from Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
As a multi-passionate, multi-talented, multi-dimensional human being and entrepreneur, I do love that. And I know you two are a fan of basically like learning all of the things and expanding and up-leveling and challenging yourself and then being able to integrate all of that coding so that you can support your clients and the people that you're here to serve, which you do, fabulously. I've had massages from you. I've done SRT with you, maybe SIT. I've also sat in beautiful meditations with you in our work together, and we have done magical things. So all of the awesome whenever we're hanging out together or we're working together.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly.
And exciting.
And I think that's really uncomfortable for some people to not have a full template and to know. The unknown is a place of discomfort for a lot of people. And the whole entrepreneurial game, the whole ascension or intuition development, all of that is full of unknowns, and getting comfortable with that discomfort is, I feel like, part of our journey. And I felt like we were going to wind up talking about that today as well.
Absolutely. Like, I know for some of you might know this about me, but I was actually an elementary teacher before I did this for like 15 years. And that's all about the known, right? You plan with the curriculum, you learn about the kids, like everything there, especially in elementary, structure, 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 right? So I remember like when I initially left just to kind of go through the gateway of massage first and being a massage therapist, it was like, even that was unknown and, like, to be frank, scary AF, right? Or scary as sleep, right? But yeah, like the unknown and that feeling like we don't have control sometimes, I think can be super, super terrifying for a lot of people. But if you look at the flip side of that, in my opinion, anyways, the beauty of that is there's so much that's possible, right? What else is possible if I'm not sitting or fixating even on everything that I can control or everything that I know? And so it can be such a beautiful experience of allowing ourselves to just open up, right?
Absolutely. To
Yeah.
the terrifyingly at times creative forces of
Mhm.
the universal field, right? The
Yeah.
realms that are even beyond our imagination have
Mhm.
so much more creativity and vision and perspective. And when we allow ourselves to be guided and to
Yep.
surrender to those higher visions coming maybe from source or our highest self, right? Our divine cosmic template and soul blueprint and what
Yep.
we're here to do in our most expanded expression. That stuff
Mhm.
is terrifying. It's huge, it's uncomfortable, and it stretches us beyond what we think we're capable of doing. I think
Yeah.
pretty much all of the time. I've never met anyone that stepped into that highest expression that was like, piece of cake. That was so easy.
That was easy. Yeah, never, right? It's always like, that was a wild ride. That was super cool. And the other thing I notice about myself is it's never what I might have considered or thought it was going to be. Like if I were to rewind even 5 years ago when I started the virtual piece of my business, when the pandemic hit, I would have never predicted where I was going to go or where I am right now. There might have been elements of it that had some truth to it, right? But I could have never even have imagined it all,
Exactly.
right?
So that's it, like there's so many different places this conversation wants to go in the
Yeah.
multidimensional. And I'm like, I want to talk about all of this stuff. What wants to come through first is just to refine what I'm saying about like it's not easy because there comes to a point where you look back and you go, oh, this when I surrendered my control and my need to control, it did get so much easier, right? It's the
Yes.
letting go piece of trying to design an outcome and be really attached to it
Yep.
and allowing your higher guidance, your highest self, whatever you want to connect with it, your team of light to
Yep.
support you in expanding that vision beyond what the ego is telling you is the safe, comfortable, rational, reasonable way of living your life or building a business.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, and I feel like, when we're in that state of needing to know, or we're in that state of control, even though it's comfortable, behind it energetically, it very much has an energy of almost like we're trying to hike up the mountain or to move uphill. Right? There's no flow often in that because it's in those spaces where we're trying to control or we want to know everything that we are not following our intuition. We're not following our inner guidance. We're saying yes to things we should be saying no to. We're doing the shoulds rather than what we really want to, right? And we're falling into all of those kind of patterns that essentially when we look back, we're like, oh, I totally sabotaged myself there, right? Or, oh, that's not what I wanted at all, right?
Yeah, there's a piece to it of self-trust and trust
Mm.
in the support that you have, trust in the divine plan, trust in
Mhm.
the unknown that you're going to be
Yep.
okay if
Yeah.
you let go. And I know from the part right before the letting go, that's the scariest part. I see it in my clients, I've done it myself. But then in the free fall, I have always personally found the energy shift and suddenly I'm like, oh, I am so supported. Oh, I forgot. I can actually fly. This is even better than what I could have done. And it like from that place, there is more ease, there's more flow, there's the energy of grace and
Yes.
confidence and all of that support. But
Yeah.
until you actually experience it, it's like doing a trust fall into the universe and having no idea if it's going to catch you or you're just going to like fall forever.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It reminds me of, did you ever see that? Like, it wasn't a meme, but it was like an inspirational quote, right? And it would say, what if I fall? And then it would say, oh, darling, but what if you fly?
Hmm,
If you fly,
I love that.
right? And it also reminds me of, there's a quote that I've been using quite a bit actually by Robin Sharma. And it says, the universe favors the brave.
Yeah.
And I love that one too. Right. Because at the end of the day, to me, it's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen is I could fail. Whatever I'm trying to do could flop. I could have that experience. And there's so much learning about myself that I would gain from that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful piece. And the other beautiful piece is that even when you steer off the beaten path and you move away from your intuition into your conditioning and into your programs, you can always come back. Right? It never goes away.
Yeah. And it typically is just a great reminder that,
Yeah.
oh man, I should have listened, right? Who's had that experience of
Yeah.
not listening and then going like, oh yeah. And then so the next time you're like, you've got the top of mind and you're like, then I should listen. So
Yeah.
for me and for most of the people I work with, I always find it's really about the perspective through which you're looking at your life and your mistakes, right?
Yes.
There's so much fear of failure. But failure is a part of the process, and mistakes are like absolutely, first off, inevitable. So
Mhm.
trying to keep yourself from making mistakes just keeps you so small and restricted. And that perfection paralysis that I see so often is hindering all of the creativity and the insight and the intuition.
Yeah, totally. And when it comes to perfectionist piece too, one of the things that I've learned is that I remember I used to have this thought all the time of like, if it doesn't work in some way, shape, or form, everyone's going to know. Right. It was this perception that I had that I was projecting out there that everyone's going to know if I failed. Everyone's going to know if I failed. And I mean, there could be some truth to that. But what I learned more in that space of when things weren't working out for me is the biggest secret of all, which is no one's fucking watching and no one really cares. Really. No one actually cares. Not because they don't care about you, but they got their own shit going on.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. So this is something that I see as something that stops people from creating and from forging their own path and building the business or making the leap or asking
Mhm.
out that person or just anything that feels
Yes.
really big is they stop themselves from doing it. I'm really grateful that I had my experiences forged in the fires of like learning how to be a gymnast at trampoline and tumbling specifically. And I did, because before that, I really only liked being good at things and I only liked doing things that I was good at and I knew I could do easily.
Yeah.
But in that experience of training at like a national level, like you're gonna mess up and you are going to mess up and you're going to get it wrong more times than you get it right, and it's probably never going to be perfect, and it just you learn through the failures, you learn how to adjust things and fine tune things, and you gather the data, and sometimes you get hurt, but then maybe you've got a little more caution and that's healthy, and there's this opportunity to turn every failure into just that lesson, that part that you can take. And it's the same when you launch a program, you're building a
Yep.
business, you're doing things, you're going to have things that don't work. But then if you
Totally.
can just be like a scientist and not take it personally
Yeah.
and make it mean something about your value and your worth, and you just go,
Yeah.
oh, that didn't work. What was it? Was it the wrong offer, the wrong people, the wrong offer in front of the wrong people?
Mhm.
Was it the wrong time? Was it the
Yeah.
wrong messaging? And then you just adjust things from that. And then the next time you do it, it's better. Like it's
Yeah.
okay.
Totally. Yeah. And it's not even that it's wrong. It's just that it was misaligned.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting, like, especially over the last 18 months or so, I have done a lot of work with the idea of neutrality and neutrality from the space of looking at everything that are kind of like my shadow aspects, we could say, right? Like whether it's the perfectionism or the procrastination, the imposter syndrome, like all of those types of things, and recognizing that that's a part of my conditioning because in part, well, not all of it, but because of some of the projections, the expectations, the assumptions, the separations, the points of view that I have or that I have taken on from other people that actually don't even belong to me. they're not even mine to begin with. And yet for the longest time, I was allowing them to kind of run how I was operating and how I was showing up. And it really actually came to a bit of a head just a couple of weeks ago, because I had been in a training it was an 18-month training that I had been in, and it was all virtual up until the very last week. And then we met in person for a week. And in this training, we did tons of work. So those of you that are watching this that work with me know that, like, I did court and contract stuff, more Akashic work. We did energy work. We did walk-ins. We did, mental health stuff. Like, just, it was like a whole part and parcel of mind, body, spirit, and how it works on an energetic level, right? And all the different ways it can start to affect us. And during that entire time, I continued to develop my intuition. I also teach in intuitive development, right? And continued. And the biggest lesson that I learned when I went on this in-person retreat was, it was like this next level of intuition for me, from the perspective of, it's one thing to follow your intuition when it's kind of like nobody's watching and nobody knows. It's like, well, I'll follow the hit, or I'll follow the intuitive nudge, because if it doesn't work out, no one's going to know, right? It's a whole other thing to be standing with a group of 30, 40 some people and having to follow your intuition and speak it out loud, even in instances where other people don't agree with what your intuition is telling you. It was like a whole new level for me of bringing in neutrality from the space of not taking that personal, or not making myself wrong because I had different information, and not only not making myself wrong, but also not comparing, right? And letting the ego come in and create almost like this hierarchy, right? It was just like, I'm here and I'm standing here, you're here and you're standing here, and it's all okay. But there was no meaning behind it, right? Or there was no meaning to make about how good or how not good I was, or any of those other stories that I would have made up in the past.
Congratulations on that, because
Thank you.
that is a huge shift energetically, to be able to stand in what, like, you're talking about neutrality. I like to call it divine neutrality, because
Yeah.
that, when I say it as such, I feel the love in it, where there's no opportunity to make people wrong. It's just the infinite perspectives, understanding that everybody is coming from their own experience, their own wounding, their own traumas, their own perspectives and belief systems, and many of them might not even be theirs. And if you had lived the exact same life that they had lived, you'd probably perceive it as that as well.
Yes.
Right? In that infinite perspective of things. And so it's not right, wrong, good, bad, but there's also a zooming out, like, to that higher perspective of I really feel like that's just a superpower that I have. I'm able to zoom out. Sometimes that
Totally.
is a shadow aspect of mine, because it can be a protective mechanism as opposed to anything else, to not be embroiled in the human. But being able to zoom out and see things from all perspectives and lenses and understanding, it shifts your life into this place where there's no longer resistance. There's no longer the force of even needing to be right, if that makes sense. That's at least my experience.
Totally. Like, even in that situation, for me, it's fascinating. I'm still looking backwards and like pulling pieces out of it, right? And threads and codes out of it, because even looking back, like, there was a time when I would have been in a training with 30 or more people, and I would have heard other people say, okay, I think XYZ, or I feel XYZ, whatever it is. And I literally would have just like taken about 4 steps back and shrunk and stayed quiet and said nothing, out of fear of being wrong, or being judged for thinking something different, or being wrong, or whatever that looks like. Right. And there was this really beautiful element there for me of not needing to be agreed with, not needing to be, right. And it was this beautiful, beautiful experience of neutrality, where I didn't have anything to prove. And that's probably the first time that I've ever experienced that in that kind of context, in that kind of container. Yeah.
I love that journey into self-trust and the power to stand on your own, forge your own path, as you know, you have
Yeah.
really intended over these last few years. Really, I've witnessed the evolution in you, and
Yeah.
the creative power that you hold from that space is so much more expansive and infinite, and I feel like it has the capacity to bring you so much more abundance as well.
Yeah. Well, that's my hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But even looking back to like, do you remember when you and I were working together, and we did our coaching package at the beginning of the pandemic and we were working with light language? Totally different vibration, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It was, if I recall correctly, a time when I could feel how tapped in and just attuned you were to these frequencies, and like you just knew stuff, but you wouldn't allow yourself to validate that and be like, this is true for me. Right. So witnessing
Yeah.
you now being in this space of here's my truth and I'm just going to share it, and not worry about whether or not it's right or wrong. Like that's basically like a 180 flip. So I'm so
Yeah.
excited to see what you can create from that place that feels really more, it's like security, stability, like you're being your own everything, I guess, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, instead of looking for the external validation and
Totally.
confirmation.
Yeah, like when we started working together, I still had a huge like imposter syndrome going on for sure, right? And there was tons of self-doubt and like, am I making this up? Or I would be doing the comparison game, right? It was like, well, I'm not as good as Aurora or Casey, or I'm not as good as whoever else I was working with, right? Or I need to know more. I need to take more courses. I need to, wait for my divine awakening to drop down from the heavens and bless me and gift me or whatever it was, right? And what's so fascinating, because it was maybe halfway through our time together that I spoke light language for the first time, I think, ish, like about that.
Okay, yeah.
And what was so funny is up until that point, I had a huge like perception or expectation of what it would be like the first time that I spoke light language.
Mm.
Right. And I had kind of like glorified it, which I think is a common thing. I don't know. You would know better than me because that's your expertise. Is that a common thing?
Um, for some people,
Okay.
I think it depends on the lens through which people are looking at it.
Yeah. Cause I totally did. I was like, it's going to be this amazing, like, aha, epiphany experience of speaking light language and, kind of the whole skies are going to part kind of idea. Right. And then when it happened the first time, I was in the shower. I was in the shower naked by myself. It was like the most mundane thing ever. Right.
But it feels so good, right? It
Oh,
feels aligned,
yes,
but it is more subtle. It's the same sensation that I get when I'm just in meditation and I'm aligned and I'm just in
totally.
touch with spirit.
You know what? It was so easy. I would have never imagined that it was so easy. That's the crazy part about it. That's the part that up until that point that was blocking me for sure, was this idea that I had to be a certain way or have a certain thing in order to do it. And then when it happened, I was like, it was almost deflating in a way, maybe just slightly, because I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. That's all. Now what?
When you're in the flow and you're not in your mind and there's no resistance,
Yep.
and you just allow, you're in surrender,
Mhm.
it is effortless. Most things are. And I've been a hula hoop teacher and a gymnastics teacher and so many other things, and a coach, and also a light language activator for hundreds of people now. And
Mhm.
the trick for most people is to try less hard, because it's
Yeah,
the force that creates the resistance and the counterforce and all of the squishiness. And it's the relaxation and openness and flow that allows things to just happen.
totally. It was almost like I had to tune out to tune in, right? Kind of when your brain goes into those two states where you can put some attention over here, but it's so mundane, like washing the dishes or something, right? It's so mundane that you actually don't have to pay attention, that then you can start to like let yourself go over here, even though you can continue to do this. That's what it was like for me.
1000%. And that is actually what I recommend to a lot of people inside
Oh,
my light language course is after it's been activated, because I usually take people through in this masterclass where I've really fine-tuned my ability to turn on everybody's light language, in an hour, basically, maybe an hour and a half, because we go through some prep and some understanding. First, I get people out of their head and
mhm.
into alignment,
Yeah.
right, with spirit, but then we make it fun and easy, and we do some exercises that feel silly, and then all of a sudden people are speaking light language, or they're doing it with their hands, and they're like, oh, is that it? And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, the
Yeah.
effortlessness
Yeah.
is the key.
Totally.
And
And you know, I feel like it's the same with intuitive development too. Like I do the same thing in my Forge Your Own Path program. Like the first third of the program is all about intuitive development. And we use different divination tools, right? Like we use a pendulum, we use oracle cards, we do some muscle testing, and then we play and we get partnered up and we do all of those things. And same thing. It's like, don't take it so seriously, right? You'd like, I know for me, I was like, this must be like the biggest exam of my life. I was so serious about it for a while, right? And the more that I let myself play, the more that I let myself just, follow the nudges and do whatever, the easier and the easier that it got.
1000%. These are keys to life. So if you're watching live, hi, welcome. If you're watching on the
Yeah.
replay, like these are key codes for a life of ease, flow, grace, abundance, support.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't actually have to be hard when we allow ourselves to be in that place of openness
Yeah.
and there's no resistance. And you can only get there when you don't have a bunch of like stress, trauma in your body. You have to be able to physically
Yeah.
relax. And then I do want to expand on what you were saying in the shower. When you're driving, when you're going for a walk, when you're washing dishes,
Yeah.
this is when people usually get like their bright ideas, right? Or I ask my students to speak light language, sing light language, doing the
Mhm.
things when they're in that slightly distracted state. It's so profound. But it works for intuition in terms of if you're feeling stuck, go for a walk, right? Dance,
Yes.
move, shake your body, play a game, do something that gets your mind off of it because your subconscious and your super conscious can then get in there and support you.
Totally. Like I get my best ideas. Well, I still get my best ideas in the shower, including light language and driving. I'll also get them when I'm
Yep.
driving. And the third one, which is the most recent, is back in March, I started going to 6 a.m. spin classes.
Mm,
And the first couple classes I went to was a bit of a shock to the system just because it was so loud in there. Because I'm not used to like loud music, especially coming off the pandemic, right? Like I was like, oh, not used to all that sound. But once I got used to that, oftentimes what I find now is I'll go into class and I start like doing my little thing and biking and changing the gear and whatever. And the next thing you know, I'm like off in La La Land. I'm like planning posts or I'm doing programs or whatever. Then the class ends and I like miss the whole thing. And I'm like, did I even go up a hill today? It's like, I don't even know. It's like I forgot to change my gear because I was just so over here in creative mode. While the other side of me was just doing the mundane little, like, biking up the hill or whatever.
mhm. It kind of sounds like dissociation, but it's really not.
No.
It's a multidimensional awareness that you can have and being in two places
Yeah,
at once. And it also kind of speaks to flow state,
totally. That's exactly what it feels like. It feels like flow for sure. Yeah.
right? Just being and
Mhm.
everything, body, mind, heart, soul, it's all in alignment and it's effortless, right? You
Yes.
don't have to try.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's important to mention too with that effortlessness is it's important to get rid of the noise, and yes, that could be in meditating, breath work, those types of practices, but sometimes it's also the noise up here, right? Like for me, I had to get rid of the imposter syndrome, right?
Mhm.
Not that I'm rid of it completely, but I had to work through some of those pieces. Right. I
Mhm.
went into my Akashic records. I did clearing statements. I did all of those kind of things to work through and to release those energies. Because if we're holding a lot of those energies that don't feel good, then it's really hard to access that state of flow or that state of ease, right?
Absolutely. And that is the thing. There it's hard until it becomes easy. There has to be the work and the practice and the mastery. And then when you put in that effort and you have the discipline, and it's not a one-time thing either, because there's going to be more that arises that you do need to transform for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Everyday stresses, new things that come up, new level, new devil, all of that. But
Yeah.
if you use tools, and there's a million available, to transform the density, then you can make a more direct connection to spirit and then be in flow. And that's the embodiment piece. So I've
Yes.
actually just described my signature system to work with people in light language or business coaching. It's called evolutionary alchemy. And we played with that when we were working, but I called it joyful alchemy back
You
in the
did.
day,
Yep.
because I was like, oh, it's so fun to like get into flow. And I forgot that the first part is not very joyful for people. It's hard. It
Yep.
sucks and it's uncomfortable. So I call it evolutionary alchemy now, but it's what I use to support people in actually getting into that flow state of trust, grace, surrender, intuition, and action, right? Which is
Yeah.
the flow. But the tools work, and you have so many of them. So I'm curious, how do you choose what is the right tool for you or client in the moment?
You know, one of the reasons that I have so many tools in my toolbox is because first and foremost, I believe there's not just one tool for every person or every body, right?
Mhm.
So it's really important for me to be able to give people access to a lot of different things. And for me, in my experience, intuition is just like working out your muscles in the gym. Like it's that tangible from the perspective of it's never one and done, right? Like it's a journey of developing. If you want to, get really buff and, compete in a bodybuilder competition, you can't just go to the gym once and all of a sudden you've got like really nice biceps, and it doesn't work like that. Right. So intuition very much is a tool. It's accessible to anyone, and you've got to play and be willing to practice. So I like to, and this is what I do in Forge Your Own Path, is we start with intuition development and I bring forward all of the tools, and people will find some easier and some harder. Right.
Mhm.
And I always say, start with what's easy. Doesn't mean you don't have to ever do any of the other ones, but start with what's easy until you feel confident in that.
Yeah.
Right. I know for me, sometimes it's about where I'm at now too, like meaning like, okay, if I'm in the grocery store, I could pull out my pendulum, or I might not have a pendulum. I could take off my necklace, or I might just muscle test. And that's the beauty of having many tools too, is once you start to work with them and feel comfortable with them all, then you start to bring them in whenever they fit. Sometimes it's the oracle cards, right? But to me, the more tools you have, the more empowered you are to access your intuition, right? And what people don't know actually about pendulum work, and pendulums is one of my favorite things, and that's probably from my SRT training and the Akashic records, but not everyone is able to work with a pendulum right off the bat. And the reason for that is because sometimes we have past life programming in place, contracts, oaths, vows, things that have happened in the past that are actually keeping us from accessing our tools or accessing our intuition. So it's not that they can never work with a pendulum. It's just that they need to clear away that old programming or those past lives first. And then we program the pendulum, and it's the sky's the limit after that. Right. So that's why I incorporate clearing in the Forge Your Own Path program for the beginning. So when we're doing the intuitive development, we're also doing SRT, and we're doing energetic clearing to remove any blocks and barriers that you have to accessing your intuition the first time. Right. Because you may have a wound of persecution. You may have been a witch in a past life. There's so many different scenarios, right? And the details at the end of the day really don't matter. But what's important is that we start to clear and remove everything that's kind of standing in our way, that's keeping us from moving forward on our journey.
Yeah, it's a past life, Akashic, soul, and sometimes collective
Yes.
energies that you need to move, that you've bought into that aren't even yours. But
Mhm.
I also just feel like mentioning sometimes it's also what has transpired in this life, and it can be
Yes.
trauma that you're holding in your body, maybe around using your voice, accessing your magic, or just like any kind of either like capital T trauma, a really big event that's really activating your nervous system so you don't feel safe.
Yep.
Or it could be a series of small traumas and feeling unsupported and feeling
Yep.
unsafe. So sometimes you do need to know what it's from. But for me, the most important intuitive development tip that I can give my students and my clients is to have a calm relaxed nervous system, to be in that parasympathetic rest and digest
Mhm.
energy. Because
Mhm.
if our shields are up and we don't feel safe, there's an energetic shield around us that is going to make sure that you either can't tune in,
Yep.
you can't trust yourself,
Yep.
or if something does get through, it feels distorted. And you're like,
Yes.
oh, I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the other tip I would say too is to be willing to play and be willing to be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's one of the things we work on too is the idea of being wrong, because it's actually not about right or wrong,
Yeah, back to
right?
neutrality, right?
That's right. Yeah, but I mean, when you look at like my journey, or even when I was a teacher, how much we embed that into the students, right? That things have
Mm-hmm.
to be right or wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're black and white. And when we get into work like this and intuition, there is no black or white, right? And essentially, all roads kind of lead you back to the same place. It's just that some roads are a little longer than others. Some roads are a little bit straighter than others. Some roads are a little more windy than others. Sometimes we need to go back in order to go forward, right? Like there's all these different trajectories and directions that we can take. But that's part of the human journey, because the human journey is about contrast. Like, what would our life be like if we didn't have contrast? Well, it definitely wouldn't be 3D.
I mean, that sounds awfully boring, really, when I
It
tap
does.
into it.
Yeah. Because we'd all be, I mean, we all are the same, but we would all be the same. You know what I mean? That's like
Yeah,
really
I
essential right
mean,
there.
getting very metaphysical, I always feel like that boredom of sameness and oneness is why we have the entire multiverse, because
Yeah.
like, source in its infinite divine essence of the everythingness and oneness is, they would be really boring, right?
Yeah.
There's no conflict, there's no drama, there's no like a narrative arc, there's no redemption journey, right? The
Yeah.
perfection would be meh, and you'd want to have
Yeah.
some
And then there's no lessons.
experiences.
Yeah. There's no lessons. There's no experience. There's no learning. There's no, even developing your own taste or your own likes and dislikes. Like there's no
Mhm,
personality,
mhm.
right?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
feel like that is such a side journey to developing the intuition, but also they're interwoven. As you really connect and align with your intuition, you're able to bring through more of who you are
Yeah.
without all of the other people's projections and expectations
Yes.
and the collective. And it's like, what is your soul essence? What are
Yeah.
you here to bring forward?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
For
I
me,
mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say the way that you found me originally,
Yep.
or at least decided to work with me, was through the weirdest thing that I do that I never would have expected,
Oh,
right? The
really?
light language.
Yep.
So I had been a performer, a hula hoop teacher, and flow and expression and all of that soul stuff. That was easy for me. But when light language started coming through for me, I didn't think I was going to do anything with it or that it was going to be important. It was kind of like this little party trick.
Yeah.
But when the pandemic happened and all of my in-person hula hoop workshops and everything were canceled immediately, and I realized I had this space to build the online business that I'd been working on behind the scenes, thanks to my intuition, actually, that came through and guided me. So I was
Yeah.
listening to that. There was just one day where my intuition said, go live on Facebook and speak light language. And I was like, why? And it was just like, you have frequencies and soul tones that people need to hear right now, and it's going to be helpful for
Yeah.
people. So just go and do it without very much more intention than that. I just wanted to offer the frequency that I know I can bring through, which is the frequency of home and love and that divine union. And I remember you reached out to work with me shortly after hearing something like that. And you very clearly said, I don't even know what you do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do? I need to work with you. So I'd love to hear, because I've heard the story before, but I think it really goes to show that forging your own path thing.
Yeah.
You know, what it was that struck you. How did your intuition guide
Yeah.
to working
And
with me?
yeah, I would love to answer that question, but can I ask you a question first?
Yeah, of course.
What thoughts did you have, or how did you feel the very first time that you shared light language publicly?
Oh, when it was pre-recorded, the first time I did it, which was for a YouTube video, I was terrified
Mhm.
because I had some witch wounding coming up, going like, it is not safe to do this thing. People aren't going to get it. They're going to misunderstand you, which means you're in danger of being stoned,
Yeah.
hung, drawn and quartered, exiled out into the desert, which had happened to me in many past lives.
Yeah.
Shaken in my boots, but I also talked myself into the understanding that I was here and now, and I was being guided to do this, and it was a different time and a different place. And after I did it, I was like, oh, whew, oh, I'm alive. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually remember and I will answer your question, but I was curious if your experience was similar to mine, because what ran through my head the first time that I shared it, and it wasn't even publicly, it was actually on a Zoom call with 5 other friends, actually. And my biggest fear was, what if it's not real? Like, what if I'm making it all up? And I think that's a really common thought and fear for people, whether they're working with light language or whether they're working with their intuition, is because it is actually so easy and it's subtle. People are terrified that they're just making shit up. I don't know how many times I hear that from people.
Yeah.
Do you hear the same thing too? Yeah.
Yes. So the way that I bring people into their light language is not to start by channeling galactic languages.
Yeah.
I like to start with, and some people wouldn't even consider what we start with light language, but I believe it's a form of it because it's packages of information that are encoded with light and sound and vibration.
Yeah.
But I like to tap people into their soul and
Mhm.
express that. So they have permission to just make it up because you're you. So anything that
Yeah.
you make up is from you.
Yeah.
It is like art. It's like dance. Like if someone looked at a dance piece of choreography that someone made up, like would the judgment be like, you just made that up? No, that's the point,
Mhm.
right? That multidimensional art form is what I call it. So
Yeah.
when we can really tap into that permission to actually just be in flow and begin by making it up because we are the makers of everything that we do anyway, I
Yeah.
think that takes the pressure off. You're not
Totally.
trying to channel the Arcturians or Pleiadians or whatever, right? And then
Yeah.
you can expand into something like that as your intuition develops and as you're able to bridge in that multidimensional way.
Totally. And from my experience, what the phrase, just to clarify, like the phrase making it up, from the space of someone being like, you're wrong, right? You're wrong, or it's not real, I think.
Yeah. But when you take away that judgment and
Yes.
you go into, sure, you can make it up because you can make up a business offer, you can make up a piece of art, you can make up anything. And that's actually a good thing because
Yes.
this is a side conversation, but I believe imagination is our gateway to the multidimensional realm as well as our interface with
Yeah.
it. And we have made the imagination to mean that we're just making something up as in it's not real and tangible, but our imagination is actually one of the most important ways that we connect with our intuition.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And so I think for me, like when I found you on Facebook at the beginning of the pandemic, so you weren't the first person that I had heard speak light language. I was actually in a book club for a couple of years and we were studying the Sophia Code.
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever read that, but it's an interesting book with different high priestesses like Isis and Kuan Yin and things like that. But we were studying the Sophia Code and someone in the group was speaking light language there. First time I'd ever heard it. And immediately I was fascinated. I was like, fascinated. Like, I was just like, that's so fucking cool. And I was like, and I can do that. Like, it was just this really quick knowing. I was like, I can do that. But I had no clue how to get there. Right. but I loved just like taking it all in and seeping it all in. And so the book club had ended before the pandemic and I had kind of forgotten about it. And then one night, like many people in lockdown, it's like, I don't know, it was late when I messaged you. I think it was like midnight or 2 a.m. or something. And I'm like scrolling Facebook, you know, Netflix binging and scrolling Facebook while everybody else in the house is sleeping. And I came across your video and it was just you speaking light language, and my visceral response to it was so potent and so powerful. Like it made me cry. It brought tears to my eyes. I got full goosebumps. It was one of the most beautiful things that I'd ever heard in my life. And I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I need to meet this person. Like I need to work with this person. And since then, you've even sent me some clips of light language and whatever from SoundCloud and whatever. I still listen to those to this day. I still listen to those because they are one of the most beautiful things that I've ever heard. And that's the power of frequency. And like from my experience, like I'm a bit of a like, I'm a bit snobby when it comes to meditation or something. Cause if I don't like the voice, I'm out. If I can't handle the tone in their voice, I just, that's it. Like I'll walk out if I, not from a place of like dissing them or anything, but just like, I can't, like, I'm so sensitive that way. So I'm very picky about what I want to listen to. And still to this day, your light language is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life.
Oh my gosh.
Just so you know.
I'm gonna receive that because I know you've said it before, but the fact that like all these years later, you still
It still is.
so
It
beautiful.
still is. Like, I wish you would do like circles where I could just show up and listen to your light language for like half an hour. Just a little side note.
There are things coming.
Oh, yay.
So this is the funniest thing about my path. I don't understand why people want my light language like to the degree that they do, because it's effortless. It's like, oh, this is just a thing that I do. I actually, when I experienced it for the first time, I'd heard of it, but I hadn't heard anyone speak it. First time I heard someone do it, I went, oh, I can do that. But I had been in a place of being able to express myself, and I've been practicing that. I was a belief repatterning practitioner. I didn't have an imposter syndrome or weird thoughts going, you can't. So I just went, oh, I can do that. And I just did it. And I was like, oh, that was easy. Right. So I just have this natural ability to tap into those frequencies. And then my voice was coded multidimensionally or recoded to be able to carry through these tones, these frequencies that remind people of home and that divine love and their power. And I know it moves people, but because it's so easy for me to do, I'm like, I can't believe anybody wants to hear this, because there is a belief system that I'm still running of it has to be hard, right?
Yeah.
Or like something worth doing is hard. And sometimes that's true because we have to practice, but so often what we're really here to share, like our actual magic, is those effortless things.
Totally.
And I also happen to have a toolkit of all of the things that I've learned that can help people who don't naturally turn it on to move through that and transform the blocks to it. So I can hold space for people to return to that effortlessness for their own selves as well. But
yeah,
it's been such an interesting journey, and I've tried to ignore it, but it's what people ask me for. People invite me to teach it. People are like, come and speak it, come and do it. And I kept going, what's my thing? What's the other thing? What am I here to?
yeah,
Because it was right in front of me, but I overlooked the importance because it was so easy.
yeah.
I do have, I'll just pimp this out for a second, an $11 masterclass where people can just turn on their light language for spoken and maybe some hand signals. And then there's a longer course that's about 6 modules that are really ceremonies that really take people deep into the understanding, and they get to try on the singing, signing, toning, speaking, reading, writing, and we really focus on the soul language. And then I also show the pieces of the intuition that are necessary to start tapping into the more telepathic communications, the channeling galactic languages and things like that. But it's really about speaking from your soul and being in that flow and trusting yourself. So I
Yeah.
can
And
drop a link for that below for
yeah,
people
do it.
to check into
Absolutely.
that.
I think people would love that. And, you know, totally, the easy part, like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I don't know how many times where, once you start to practice it and you use it in your everyday life, like your intuition or your light language, whatever that is, it becomes so second nature that it's like anything, you kind of don't notice anymore. It's kind of like if you change the way you eat food for the longest time, that you forget that, you don't eat bread anymore, or like you just do it, right? So I can't even tell you how many times I could be home and someone will, say something or ask me something, and I'll answer them and they're like, well, how did you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. Because you just do it,
Mhm.
right? Or you message somebody and you're like, hey, you're in my field, like, I think are you having a bad day? Like, how can, and they're like, well, how'd you know that? You just do.
Yeah, it becomes your normal,
It
right?
does.
But I'm so excited for you because I know that that imposter syndrome was such a big thing for you, and I do remember being in your field, feeling what you were bringing through, hearing your light language, hearing the profound nature of the codes that you were sharing, and I'd be like weeping and being like, "This is so amazing, oh my god," and you'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know."
Well, I felt the same as you, right? But when I look at like your light language, for me, it's, and maybe this is what draws other people. If they're in the comments and they've heard it, maybe they can drop it. I can't see the comments right now, but um, it's, for me, not only is it beautiful, it gives me this visceral experience that literally, like, from head to toe, but
Mm.
it shows what's possible. That's
Mm.
what it holds for me. It's
Oh.
pure potentiality and possibility. That's, for me, that's my experience.
I'm
And
gonna let
maybe
that
that's,
land.
yeah, like
And
maybe
receive
that's
that.
why people are always like, can you do that some more? Can you do that some more? And you're like, because you already know what's possible.
It's so interesting because what's been coming through for me, I have a rebrand coming up soon. I have
Oh,
all of this
exciting.
fine tuning of what I'm going to be offering and what I'm sharing. And it's because I've practiced enough to have clarity on what it is, what my message is, what my path is.
Mhm.
And what has come through in my meditations, that I've felt for a long time, but now I have the words to understand it, is that my voice, tones, and frequency are a portal into the infinite presence field that I know how to be in and bring others into if they're willing and ready to walk through that gateway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really appreciate the validation of
Yeah.
you saying what you've always felt, because I only recently have I been able to put it into words.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. And I really love the piece about if you're ready and willing, because I think that is representative in the full cycle of our healing journey, right? Is that we have to, in order to clear the blocks, to clear the programming, whether it's this lifetime, another lifetime, whatever that looks like, right? There has to be an element of readiness, and there has to be an element of willingness to do things differently. Right. And I've noticed in the work that I do that sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect there where someone will come to the table and it's like, okay, I want to have the session, and I want to do the energy work, but then I'm going to go back into my life and I'm going to do everything that I've always done. Right. It's kind of like going to see a hypnotist to quit smoking. And then when you get outside the office door, you light up a cigarette. Like, there's always inspired action that has to follow any type of energy work, right? Any type of belief
Mhm.
repatterning, any type of subconscious reprogramming, whatever it is. And so that's almost, for me, like, that's what I do in Forge Your Own Path anyways, is it's the cycle of healing, right? As we start to develop the intuition first so that we can start to learn to trust ourselves and to follow the nudges. And at the same time, we're working to clear whatever it is that might be blocking that, or whatever else might be coming up, whether it's procrastination, perfectionism, whatever that is. And then when we come to the final part, then we move into what we want to create.
Mhm.
Now it's time to take action from a space of being in alignment with our intuition and having all of that other noise and all of that other shit and debris moving over to the side, creating a beautiful pathway for us to forge ahead.
Mm. I love it, and
Mm.
I am gonna make sure that you drop some details about that
Oh,
course, because
I
while I
will.
haven't taken the course Forge Your Own Path, um, I was there when you were thinking about it,
You
and I
were.
felt into the possibility. I was like, yes, do this thing. This sounds amazing. I
Yeah.
remember last summer we went for brunch and
We did.
it was a thought form. It was an
Yes.
idea, but you at that time were still like, I don't know. I don't even know what the name. And I'm like, it's so perfect.
Yeah. You were like, you should do this, 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 and this. And I was like, thanks, coach. That's fabulous.
It's so much easier for me to pull out the pieces of potentiality in someone else's field. In my own, there's almost too many options. So I also need coaching and support in being able to solidify that, or just the time in applying my own tools to myself, which I don't always give to myself the time, but I am doing that now because that's that next level aligned version of myself actually
Yeah.
applies the tools and the practices that I use for others to my own.
Yeah.
But I'd love for people to hear about how they can connect with you to take this course, because I have done lots of sessions with you, and you've done group clearings and healings that I've been a part of, and I've brought you into my programming because I love how you're able to walk people through this entire
Mhm.
process that you've just described.
Aw, thank you. Yeah. So Forge Your Own Path starts, the pre-work drops on Monday, actually, and it's on pre-sale pricing right now. So I will drop the link in the comments, but you can also follow me on Facebook. My public profile is Tracy Montgomery. I also have a free Facebook group called Root to Rise the Collective. So you can drop in there if you want as well. I also have Instagram, which you can find on my Facebook page as well. And you can also join my email list if you want to check me out. My website is risewithtracy.com.
Mm,
But I'll
I
drop it
love
all.
it. Your
Yeah.
website and your posts and everything, they're so potent and powerful. The shares that you offer on social media are activating, and I feel like out of anybody I know, you go above and beyond to offer these free resources just on your Facebook, on your Instagram. So do follow her. Like, it's not just another person to follow. You'll be receiving codes, healing, inspiration, opportunities. Like,
Aw,
yeah, I love what you share.
thank you. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course. So drop the links if you're feeling like you're ready to really go through that entire healing cycle to
Mhm.
forge your own path. And I adore this conversation. We have so much more that we could talk about, but this feels like a great
Yes.
completion point. But there's so much more to share, and co-creations, and whatever we're doing next week to just hang out. I
Yeah,
can't
I'm
wait for
excited.
that, because your evolution into this, beautiful woman sitting. You're actually sitting down, aren't you? It's not a standing
I
desk.
am.
But before me right
Depends.
now, I can just feel how much more like yourself you feel. And it's like
Mhm.
I could always feel that energy that you have, but you hadn't fully brought it into your body yet. And now I'm feeling this embodied energy of your magic that just, it's
Mhm.
so rich and glorious. And everybody that has a chance to encounter you, whether it be on social media with your free resources or inside your programs or getting a massage on your table, is just better for it. So I really appreciate you being here alive on this conversation, but like just in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. And I couldn't have done it without you. Like, you taught me so much in the time that we worked together, and continue to teach me so much. But
Oh,
yeah, so much just about
mm.
how to, you were such a beautiful embodiment of what it meant to embody.
Oh,
So
I'm just soaking up all of these beautiful things you're
I
saying.
know.
I love the love fest. I really appreciate that. As someone who right out the gate called myself a soul embodiment guide, that means a lot. It's
Mhm.
so funny because when I said that, you got it. You were like, okay, I understand what that means. But there were all these people that were like, what the hell is that? And I changed it for a while because I was told that it needed to be clear so that people could understand me. And I
Mhm.
didn't fully own the fact that I'm not supposed to be fully understood by everybody, because there
Mhm.
is a frequency that people that resonate with me and are supposed to work for
Yeah.
me are going to feel like you're talking about in that visceral way, even if you don't understand it completely. There is that
Yeah.
visceral reaction. And so I I am leaning into using languaging and frequency shares that are really fully me instead of holding myself back and trying to be completely understood by everybody, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. That's beautiful because that's unapologetic. That's unwavering. That's 100% in your power. That's how you forge your
Mhm.
own path.
Though the practice over the last couple of years, I don't make myself wrong for really diving into going, how can I bring these multidimensional concepts of embodiment that don't always make sense to the mind level through in a way in English that are clear and clean and more people can understand? That was
Yeah.
important, right? But there's
Yep.
also the letting go and surrendering and just being in that flow.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
about
there's so many nuggets. I'm gonna have to come back and just listen to this because there's so many codes that you can pull down. I'm gonna have to come back.
yes.
Mhm.
Oh, there are always whenever we have a conversation together. So that's why it's been really delightful to do this one in a
Yeah.
place where people could receive it. So if you've been watching or if you're on the replay, let us know if you've got
Mm.
questions or comments. What were your golden nuggets? What are you taking away from this conversation?
What am I taking away? I feel like number one, I need to go back and watch the light language course again because I feel like there's going to be something new or something more there for me this time around. So I'm taking away that. I feel like that's a gentle reminder. Spirit's kind of like tapping me on the shoulder. They're like, hey, go over there. So I will do
Oh,
that. So I'm taking that away for sure. And I think a beautiful reminder about just the imagination piece and the
mm,
playing, right? And I might even need to go back into my own records and do a little bit of clearing around some of the experiences I've had around imagination, especially as a kid,
mm,
because I can remember some experiences where I was making art, creating art, doing those kinds of things, and it had to be a certain way, or it had to be perfect
mhm.
rather than just inspired, right? Rather than just creative and rather than just beautiful to me. So I think that's a big one.
I love that. And there is a lot of opportunity for all of us to do this clearing because we were told as kids that we were just making our stuff up or that we had to give away our authority to
Yeah.
a parent, a teacher, someone who was outside of self. And so really reclaiming that capacity to trust our imaginations and not just write it off,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Maybe there's a clearing coming on.
Woo, yes.
Right.
I would love that. And we do some of that in the light language course. So just by the way, for you, Tracy, and anyone that's watching that has access to my light language course, there is a new version of it. But if you had purchased the old version, the new version is in there now, and you can see it when you log into your Kajabi library. So you have
Beautiful.
access to all the upgraded codes because I fine-tuned it over the last several years of
Okay.
learning how to support people in this, right?
Awesome.
There's a
Okay.
lot there.
I'm ready to
And
receive that.
my
Yeah.
golden nugget is
Yes.
this phrase, the work works if you work it.
Ah, yes. I love
That's
that.
what's really being reinforced, right? But it doesn't all happen at once. And it's
Mm-mm.
everything. It's not just one thing. This has also been coming through for me. It's so alive right now. People are looking for that one thing that's going to amplify your business and your beingness or your intuition, that one thing that's going to help you lose 30 pounds. It's never one thing.
Never. It's all the things.
It's all the things. It's all the little choices you make. It's the transformation piece, the healing piece. It's the
Yeah.
alignment piece. It's the aligned action piece. It's your
Yes.
thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, your connections. But we can't simplify it anymore
No.
down
And
to
it's
one
because it
thing.
all creates your frequency, right?
Exactly. So I love
Yeah.
that. Follow the resonance, my friends. Follow those things that light you up. But just one tiny final thing, and I know you can speak to this, just because something gives you a visceral reaction where you might not even like it and it's more of a trigger doesn't mean you shouldn't actually lean into that and explore it. And I know you're a master at that, Tracy, too. So find
I
words.
completely agree. I often tell my clients, I'm like, are you triggered? They're like, uh-huh. I'm like, let's have a party. Let's get excited about the trigger. And they're like, I don't know about that. No, trigger is full of information, full of information. And then what you do with that information will be the most important thing next.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So even if you have an immediate, like, visceral, like, reaction to somebody, their light language, let's say, and it feels
Mhm.
dissonant, like you were
Yeah.
saying about how you want to follow that, sometimes it's important to look and go, what is this about though? Right? And get
Yes.
clean and clear with that, because sometimes it's an invitation to clear something. The dissonance is like bumping up against a trigger or something that needs to move.
Totally. I had that actually at the same training. I had that experience, right? There was a couple people there who triggered me, right? And it might have been just been their energy. It might have been something they said. And right away, I was like, that this has nothing to do with them. This is about me, right? And then I had to go behind the scenes and do my own work and do my own clearing statements and do my own Akashic and whatever else I decided to do to clear my own shit. Right. Whereas in the past, that would have been another thing, is I would have been like, well, clearly I don't like that person, or that person is this or that. And I would have outwardly projected that. Right.
Mm,
So I had to take that trigger and I had to go, okay, what is this bringing up in me? Right. Is it bringing up where I've been told that I'm too much, or I was told that I was too loud, or whatever it was? Right. So much information in the triggers if we're willing to see it.
absolutely. And I bet you help people with that and forge your own path as well.
We do. That's what all of the
Mhm.
clearings are about, right? Because some people are triggered to use their intuition or to share what they know. Some, and you had mentioned it before, right? They don't feel safe, or they feel like they're never heard, right? Or they feel like they'll be abandoned or they won't belong,
Mhm.
right? And even the triggers that come up with things like procrastination or perfectionism, right? If I'm not perfect, then XYZ is going to happen, right?
Mhm.
Or I'm going to put off doing XYZ because if I do it, people might judge me,
Mm.
right? All of those things, all of those things.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. And that just feels like another profound code, gold nugget for people to take away. So we can wrap this up with just gratitude. And
Mhm.
I'm so thankful, Tracy, to have this conversation with you and to know you. And please, like I said, if you're watching this on the replay or on YouTube, just drop any comments that you have, questions for Tracy
Mm.
or myself, and your gold nuggets. We would love to hear what was really impactful for you to hear.
Yes.
So
Yes, absolutely.
follow
Thank you for having
Tracy
me.
all over the place. She's going to drop her links as well. And I don't have another illumination series scheduled. I am doing these intuitively when I just notice the conversation that wants to be had. But if you are connected with me, you'll hear about the next one when it is ready to emerge. So sending you all beautiful love. It's September 1st. If you haven't already checked out my September energy update, it actually really aligns, now that I'm thinking of it, of what we were speaking about today, Tracy, because it's about putting in the discipline to do the work, to do the practices, so you can be a clear channel for all of your magic. This
Okay,
is
I'm going to drop that in my
where I
group
am.
too.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. Mhm.
Amazing. Well, have a beautiful September, a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll all connect soon.